Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Pinche Gringo Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you like our new studio on the Paseo de la Reforma right here in Mexico City. Thank you so much for joining us. My three friends that actually watch this show, the person who always stalks me, CIA agent, and my mate. Thank you so much, Cleo, for watching tonight. Pretty awesome. But we are so exhausted here at the Pinche Gringo Show after our semi-successful 2-hour 4th of July extravaganza where people basically sat in their chairs with cubrebocas and no music, staring at each other in fear. Ah! But also watching this guy eat a record 19 sandwiches at our 7th annual brisket eating contest. We go live to Pinche Gringo Show co-host and correspondent Ileana Jimenez with more on this record-breaking historic moment. What's up, Ileana? How you doing? Ileana, tell me, how was the brisket eating contest? It was crazy, right?
Yes, it was so crazy because we have like 10 contestants and they are trying to win. You know, we have Alan Espinosa who won this year. And we remember that 2 years ago, he also won, you know, but this time he ate 19 brisket sandwiches. Yes, of course.
19 sandwiches.
19 sandwiches. Yeah.
Well, let's listen. I have a clip. Let's go to the clip and watch the show.
Yes, of course. Let's see.
3, 2, 1, go!
First of all, those fireworks that really scared the crap out of me. I didn't even know it was going to go off while I was sitting there. Were you scared too?
Yeah, you know what? The contestant number 8, I remember he used to, smash the sandwich, put it into the water, and try to, to be very competitive to Alan. But at the end, Alan won. He is a personal trainer. He has his own gym. So imagine this is balance, eat a lot, win the money, have their own crew, hyping up, this contest, and also work out. Perfect balance.
It was amazing, right? You would think that the heavier you are, right, the larger you are, you would win, but it seemed like the fittest one won. What was his strategy? Did you see any, what he did that separated himself from the rest?
Yes, I think he was very, very focused, and he was, try to masticar very, 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 very fast, drink water, and be very focused. He was ready to win. I think it was his.
That's amazing.
Yes. And he really prepared himself to do it. And I think he has the most impressive fan base in Pinche Gringo.
That's great. Thanks, Liliana, so much again for joining and for being an amazing host last week. We had over 100,000 people watch the show over the course of 5 days during the show and after. Pretty amazing. And thanks again for doing it. Ileana Jimenez, Pinche Gringo Show co-host, and thank you so much for joining us. All right. Well, let's go straight to our main focus tonight. The historic first meeting between the presidents of Mexico and the United States to celebrate the enactment of the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, also known as the USMCA, or in Mexico, the Tratado de México, Estados, I guess they left out Unidos, where's the you guys, Canada, or TMEC, because in the name of a treaty, it's really important to go first, except for in Canada, where it's also called the USMCA, because Canadians are just used to being last. We're sorry you have to mention us. Thank you so much for including us. The Moose, thank you as well. But I don't understand why they didn't call it something more sexy, like the YMCA. I mean, it's more familiar and catchy. That you can provoke a dance-off when people talk about it. Like, hey, have you heard the YMCA? So cool. Or maybe like call it the YMCA, but tell people it's something different, like Yoda's Mexico-Canada-America Agreement. Or maybe yodeling Mexico-Canada-America Agreement, because everybody loves yodeling. Or maybe name it something delicious, like the yummy Mexico-Canada Agreement. I mean, just be creative here, because treaties are super boring. And we're never going to forget you, NAFTA. I want to take this time to thank you, NAFTA. You made America more spicy and Mexico more sweet. People will never forget the emotion of seeing delicious candy come to the Oxxos after having to shove it in your suitcases at the airport. Sorry, sir, your suitcase is overweight. Please, just one more bag of Hershey's, please. Or camping overnight to eat at your favorite fast food restaurant. Thank you, NAFTA, for importing the worst of America to Mexico. But the big story this week, however, is the meeting of two presidents. But getting to the United States was the big story for El Presidente. First, after spending over $200 million on a brand spanking new aircraft luxury Dreamliner, then trying to sell it with no buyer, then attempting a raffle, which I still can't understand how that would work. I mean, imagine the winning number is 1, 6, 3, 9, 4. No manches, no manches, no manches. Gane. Pregunta, ¿tienes estacionamiento? So we decided to go on the internet and buy a round trip ticket on Delta. And sorry, we need to take a pause from the serious topic of the USMCA, and we need to go to our segment, No Manches. El Presidente, no manches, come on. You have a beautiful new presidential aircraft, and it was given to you. You didn't even pay for it. It's okay. Just blame it on the last guy, but use it. And okay, maybe if Aeromexico had a direct flight from Mexico City to DC and then you got a first-class ticket, it's fine. Perfect. But they don't have that anymore. You had to change plans in Atlanta. And trust me, I've changed planes many times before in Atlanta. And I've had to make a run for it sometimes. And by the way, Mr. President, did you stop at the Sbarro at the food court in Terminal D? Great, great pizza. But did you have a chance to watch a movie on the plane? I mean, I know they're showing right now great movies like Sonic the Hedgehog or a classic that made it through the theaters like Dolittle. Did you have a seat chat with somebody? Did you like go on the system and talk to someone in another row? Was there a baby in the row behind you kicking you the whole flight? By the way, how was immigration? Did you have global entry or was there just a long line there? I'm just curious. But for more on the presidential visit to Washington and the enactment of the TMEC, we have now on the show two of the smartest guys who have ever appeared on this show and the podcast, and probably some of the best minds in Mexico City, former USMCA chief negotiator and trade wizard Kenneth Smith, and former congressman, businessman, news anchor, guru, whatever, you name it, he's done it, Agustín Barrios Gómez. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you both doing?
Good. I asked you to call me Mensch.
Mensch, yes, the Mensch, yes. Kenneth, first question for you. I was joking before about the name of the treaty, but is there like a big negotiation over what the treaty is going to be called, and what happened that they decided on two names, and why was Canada left out?
Well, you know, this is interesting because back in the NAFTA days, we did not have to worry about which country went first. because basically we were talking about a North American free trade agreement. But the fact that the U.S. insisted on calling it US-Mexico-Canada agreement, we went into quite a bit of discussion as to what should be the name in Mexico, and the Canadians wanted to define their name. So in Mexico at first, in the last administration, we thought of AMEC, Acuerdo México, Estados Unidos, Canadá, because AMEC is actually a word that, it comes from the ancient language in Mexico, and it actually means river. So there was some sort of connection with flows, trade flows, rivers. So we thought that was a good idea. Of course, when the new administration came in and they said, hey, we're adopting this child, we're going to name it, they named it TEMEC. And the Canadians actually do have a name for it. It's Canada, US-Mexico Agreement. So it's CUSMA, which has a sort of a peculiar ring to it. But yeah, there was a bit of a negotiation going on.
Canada, really? So Canada does have a name for it, but they just don't want to show it, right? They're just telling everybody, like, don't worry about it. Like, don't tell anybody, but we'll talk it from ourselves. I can't imagine that Trump was like, hey, let everybody else go first. Right? I mean,
that was a big deal. That was a big deal.
Well, Agustin,
that's the reason it was originally negotiated, right? It was, the entire thing was negotiated so that he could put his signature on it at the end of the day. Right. But anyway, so you were asking?
Yeah, I was reading the joint communique, and nothing really was negotiated or nothing major was announced. It seemed like a lot of fluff and something very political. Did anything different come out of this meeting yesterday?
Okay, so first of all, it was an invitation he couldn't refuse, right? I'm talking about AMLO because there was a quid pro quo. If you remember back during the OPEC negotiations, Mexico insisted on having a production level that was its starting production level that was completely basically fantasy. It wasn't true. They wanted a 1.3 million barrels or something like that, and it was like 900,000 barrels. But the United States, or in this case, Donald John Trump, came in and he kind of saved the day for AMLO at the time. And there were rumors of there having been a negotiation, and as part of that negotiation, it would seem, and this was mentioned also by Enrique Krause in a Washington Post article. Basically, in this negotiation, what was negotiated was the fact that that Lopez Obrador would go up to Washington D.C. and sort of buttress Donald John Trump's basically his position with Mexican and American voters. And you can see that, right? As soon as Lopez Obrador left the United States, Trump began to use the visit in his targeted marketing to Latino or Latinx voters. And so that was the reason this thing happened. And what was negotiated, well, first of all, I think that's sort of put to one side. And so you have the Mexican president actually involving himself in a political process, and there are many things that are wrong with that, especially during a pandemic, especially when there are things that are going on that are much more important. But it had to happen because Donald Trump wanted it to happen, and there was a favor that was owed to him on behalf of Lopez Obrador, and that's why it was an invitation that couldn't be refused. The fact that it was a joint communique is important. These things don't always end up in a joint communique. I think that's a good sign. For the administration, it was also very good because they sort of both showered each other with compliments. They're very similar people, so both of them are cults of personality. Both of them owe their political power to populist notions of sort of harkening back to they get along. Harkening back to the.
But isn't that strange? Usually, two men who are the same usually don't get along. They would have like a conflict of maybe they would get into a fight like who's better than the other. It's so strange that these guys are actually are getting along. It wouldn't seem like that would be the thing that would happen. No.
Well, one thing that was interesting is that
I think they get along because they're very similar.
I'm sorry, Kenneth.
No, yeah. What I mean, they do get along. I think that was shown yesterday. I think one of the things that both sides agreed to do in this visit is let's use the entry into effect in the of the USMCA to send a positive message about this new era starting economically between Mexico and the US. And everything that you saw was choreographed very carefully. If you saw the statements were relatively long. They were very polite for the standards of what Trump has said in the past about Mexico. And also, the President Lopez Obrador showered Trump with compliments, said that he had treated Mexico with respect. So, I mean, if you look at the statements over the last 3-4 years, that is clearly not the case. But there was a clear understanding between both sides that this was a choreographed event without the press sending bad signals in terms of having a Q&A session that could have been uncomfortable, and also at the end of the day to help each other's popularity back home. I think that both are under a lot of strain because of the handling of the COVID pandemic, the situation with the economy in both countries. And so this was a way of saying, we're united in North America. We will send a positive message on USMCA, which I think it is useful substantively for Mexico, especially because they had a meeting with the private sector, this dinner that they had with the private sector of both sides in the US and Mexico. It does send a signal, at least, that Mexico is open to receive investment. Of course, the proof will be in the pudding because, the US and Canadian private sectors and other private sectors throughout the world are concerned about some of the policies that Mexico is taking on renewable energy, on the cancellation of the investment of Constellation Brands investment in Mexicali. So sending a signal that's positive for investment is good. It sends a good signal. But the proof will be whether when President Lopez Obrador comes back to Mexico, if he's able to actually change these policies and send a signal to the entire cabinet that the main element here of economically is the USMCA and that it must be complied with. That will be sort of the big test that we will have in Mexico now going forward.
Right. But Kenneth, you mentioned that there was a business roundtable. And so I'm confused because he decided to fly coach and show that he's a populist and for the people, and then he has a dinner with the top Mexican businesses. Now I understand why, but was there any worry about the optics to this?
Well, I mean, I think that one thing that he did is that he chose not to bring the heads of the business chambers that had actually worked on the USMCA for years. Yeah. All the other trade negotiations. He brought a close group of businessmen that are close to him, that have supported him, that he included in an advisory council from the private sector at the beginning of his administration. And so in a way, it did send a signal. I think Trump did something similar with the people that he invited to the dinner in saying, this is going to be a friendly dinner. We're going to bring in people that support each of the presidents. And at the end of the day, you still have people who, some of them are billionaires and, they don't really represent the Mexican people if that's what the image that you want to create is. But at the end of the day, I do believe having a private sector meeting was important because Mexico is against the ropes when it comes to investor confidence, the investors' investment indexes and competitiveness indexes in the world. And so this was a chance to say, Mexico is all about USMCA. We're all in, and now they just got to prove it.
Right. Agustin, tell me something. Trump's not doing so well in the U.S. The COVID pandemic is really taking a hold on the United States right now. A lot of deaths. The economy is struggling. His popularity is way down. There hasn't been an incumbent president with this low of poll numbers at this point, close to the election, that has won re-election. So there is a big possibility for a Biden administration, for a Democratic administration to come in January. What is your thought on the future of U.S.-Mexico relations? Because as we see that people are saying that the relationship is great, but there are some who argue that it's not really. It's just America, the United States, telling Mexico kind of what to do. How is that going to change in a Biden administration?
To begin with, one of the main criticisms of the Lopez Obrador visit was exactly that, right? So that he did not meet with any of the Democratic leaders. He did not meet with anybody related to Biden. He did not get together with Joe Biden, which is something that that would not have been that difficult to do. And so I think that the Democrats, and of course you've got the Democratic members of the Hispanic caucus, having basically criticized the meeting. You've got a lot of people criticizing the meeting on that front. I think that a Biden administration would actually focus on more substantive issues, and I think that that would not be a very good thing for the Lopez Obrador administration. I think that they could very well focus on things like human rights, on things like backtracking in terms of democracy, on things like Mexicans losing certain freedoms under the current administration, on things like the dismantling of the Mexican state. Across the board, on narco violence, on several parts of the country, just completely overrun and dominated by the narco groups. There are suggestions that the current administration has even negotiated with. So I think that it would be a very dangerous, it's a very difficult situation for the Lopez Obrador administration, apart from the fact that there are people in Washington that are noticing on the right, people like Senator Marco Rubio, that are noticing the infiltration of basically political agitators from Cuba, from Venezuela, who are getting together, and they're in Mexico, and they're getting together with people of the Lopez Obrador administration. So I think right now he's able to pull it off because of the fact that he does have this good personal relationship with the current president of the United States. But I think to try to pull a wool over the eyes of a Biden administration that might look for more substantive stuff with respect to Mexico, I think that would be a lot harder.
This is going to be really interesting. We have a couple of months left, and I hope you guys are going to join us frequently in the next 4 months, because the campaign is getting really serious, especially now that the candidates are coming out, and we would love your analysis. Thank you guys both for joining us today. Agustín Barrios Gómez and Kenneth Smith, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, man.
All right, moving on. In other news, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive for the coronavirus, a shocking revelation after months of denying the severity of the virus and refusing to wear a mask in public places. We go live to our favorite city in the world, Rio de Janeiro, to longtime resident Florian Fournier with a quick look of what's happening on the ground over there. Florian, how are you, sir?
Hey, guys. What's up?
How you doing over there, Florian? Things are a little crazy in Brazil. It has become the hot spot in the world. It is the #1 country in the world with coronavirus deaths and also infections. Now your president has the coronavirus. What is the mood on the ground in Rio? I can't imagine anything, including a coronavirus, that's going to stop the caipirinhas and the samba. But what does it look like over there in Rio?
Well, actually, what's very strange is that caipirinhas are back for the last couple of days. They're reopening the bars, restaurants. At the same, what is a bit complicated for people to understand from outside Brazil is that Brazil is a huge country, and coronavirus has been stronger and stronger, but at the same time, it's getting now more in the countryside than it was in the big cities. So in Rio, for instance, it's been pretty strong, but depending on the neighborhood, it's now getting a bit. So it's a complicated situation because they're reopening the restaurants and they're reopening some different places, but at the same time, it's still growing on some part of the cities.
Right. Now, I talked to a couple of friends in Brazil because in the news media all around the world, they're really going after Bolsonaro. But there are some people in Brazil who are believing in him and trusting him, but all of the news outside of Brazil is bad for him. Is that the mood in the country right now?
Well, actually, nobody knows anymore what you need to trust. You don't know what's right, what's wrong. You just know that the numbers are growing. You know that the situation is extremely bad. And but at the same time, the economy is also a very strong worry for the people living here. So it's a mixed feeling. Like people are realizing that they're like you have this kind of battle between the governor on one side, the president on the other side, and nobody knows now how to fix it.
Okay, so the bars are open, the clubs are open, or is everything still shut down?
It's only like they are reopening the bars in Rio. They are now reopened like with half of the different, like you can only go until 50% of the capacity, and you need to have 2 meters between each of the different places. Like everyone needs to wear like this kind of masks, and the waiters are using masks. Clubs are not open, of course, and you have no events at all. So it's only restaurants in Sao Paulo, for instance. They're only reopening from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you cannot go like after 5 p.m. Yeah. So it's a really like depending on the place. Like some places are open, some other are closed, and the thing is just that like this kind of this idea of the new normal is not happening. Like there is no new normal. It's just like a strange normal.
Well, I mean, I think the good news is that Brazil in February is pretty fantastic, and we're hoping that everything gets better. So there's going to be a wonderful carnival next year, and then all those celebrations. What do you think?
Well, I don't know, like I don't know, like what they say, and that's actually interesting because I've seen a couple of people like saying that they've been sick at the moment of the carnival. So like what we are all like thinking is that like the coronavirus was already in Brazil at the moment of carnival. It's just that nobody knew, but it was already there. And right now, the rumors are saying that we're gonna get medication and vaccine. Yeah, by the end of the year. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, good luck, Florian. I know that things are a little bit crazy there. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I know it's a little late over there.
How are you doing in Mexico? Is that okay?
Yeah, we're doing all right. We're struggling as well. It's climbing, but I think similar to you, it's passing from one place to the other. But hopefully we'll be good. Florian Fournier, live from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Be safe, Florian, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Finally, after months of waiting, restaurants opened in Mexico City after the government moved from the famous streetlight system from red to orange. For more on this, we go to Pinche Gringo show correspondent Javier Negrete with more. Javier?
Hi everyone, we are once again here in Mexico City, this time to answer the question, how do the people feel going back to public places, restaurants, blah blah blah. So let's find out, but first...
Pues súper bien, es la primera vez que nos sentamos en un restaurante después de todo este tiempo de estar encerrados.
Nerviosa, muy emocionada, estoy con mi novio.
Extraños, pero confiando en que pues, el restaurante está tomando las medidas, nosotros.
Pues es muy raro, todas las medidas, hay muy poca gente, es como si fuera domingo siempre, pero con mayor precaución.
Muy bien, ya estamos de regreso aquí, saliendo de esta pandemia, pero regresando a los lugares buenos para comer, que extrañamos mucho.
También, pues tratando de seguir adelante con todo.
Habíamos pedido solamente para comer en la casa y es la primera vez que
comemos fuera.
Que comemos fuera.
Se siente un poco solo todavía.
Muy contentos de volver a compartir y volver a salir, obviamente con las medidas preventivas que debemos de tener.
Sí se extraña la convivencia.
Aparte hoy es mi cumpleaños.
Sí, yo creo que ya hace falta, ¿no? Ya con mucho tiempo de estar encerrados.
So, that is what the people said. They feel kind of weird, but also excited about going out and meet with family and friends. Thanks for watching, and let's go back with Dan.
Thanks, Javier, for your report. We are now live with Pinche Gringo show correspondent, the amazing, illustrious commercial director of Pinche Gringo Barbecue, Laila Garcia Mora. Laila, there you are. Laila, how have the reopening gone so far? Is it safe? And as Javier said, customers are a little nervous, but feeling at ease. What's going on over there?
Thank you, Dan. Good night. Well, as Javier mentioned, we're opening. Clients are still feeling a little weird after so many weeks of being at home. But in order to open the restaurants, or at least our restaurants, we had to go through a big process of training, a big process of even physical changes to the sucursales. So the government is sure that the places that are opening are safe for customers.
Right. So how are customers reacting? We heard a little bit about what Javier was saying, but like, how do they feel about what's going on?
Well, most of them feel so excited to finally be outside. But we have to be careful with that excitement, because if we don't take the proper actions while we are sitting in a restaurant, and this is not just for people that go to Pinche Gringo, like all of us, whenever we go outside and go to a restaurant, we have to be conscious that the virus is still there. So we have to follow all the recommendations that the restaurants are making. For example, using the cubrebocas in specific spaces of the restaurants, the cleanliness of our hands, how we approach people, how near we are to other people. And if we follow these recommendations, I'm sure that we are all going to be fine, and we're going to go back to normal sooner than expected.
Absolutely. Pinche Gringo is sometimes usually crowded. Has it been crowded? And I think some people might feel that there's too many people there. What's going on with that?
Well, then we are like crossing our fingers to see our places crowded again. But right now we have to respect the percentage of occupation that the government is recommending. And depending on the semáforo and the light that the government gives us is the percentage of clients that we can actually receive inside the restaurants. We also have still our delivery system working perfectly. So if someone rather stays at home, they can still have our food.
Okay, last question, and we have to talk about this. I think we've talked about it on shows before, but tell me more about the pork belly. I mean, it's just like a big bunch of bacon on a sandwich or something like that?
No, it's not bacon. It's like bacon, but improved, like bigger, like like juicier, like bacon 0.2. And we're going to pork belly for the rest of July, so you're still early on the month to order, and we have it by pound, or you can order it inside an amazing sandwich. So I recommend to all of you that you go to our platforms right now and order the pork belly, and you're going to enjoy it so much.
All right, thank you so much, Laila Garcia Mora, Commercial Director of Pinche Gringo Barbecue and Pinche Gringo Show correspondent. Thanks again and again and again for every week that you're on the show with us. See you soon.
Thank you, Dan. It's amazing to be here.
Thank you. Finally tonight, last week we said goodbye to NAFTA and ushered in a new era of trade between the US, Mexico, and Canada. For good or for worse, NAFTA brought these countries closer together. What I've learned with running barbecue restaurants that offers authentic, slow-cooked American food to Mexicans in Mexico is that it's important to forge a mutual friendship, one of understanding, cooperation, and most importantly, to be humble. Maybe Mexico doesn't have as robust of an economic engine or a large military apparatus than the US. But is that really the most important indicator of quality of life? I think that here in Mi México lindo y querido, we have a much better work-life balance, a colorful culture, great music, delicious food, and biodiversity. It's a different life. And maybe no pasa nada is not a great economic concept, but it's one that promotes happiness. I'm not knocking the United States. I'm proud of where I come from, but I'm encouraging my adopted country to not succumb to la Malinche, to stand up for itself. Because what I've learned in my almost 11 years here, that what happens here is not necessarily right or wrong or better or worse. When comparing it to the US, it's just different. That's our show for tonight. Please join us next week for another edition of the Pinche Gringo Show. We leave you tonight with the re-airing of the most beautiful rendition of God Bless America I've ever heard that was played last week at our show, the 4th of July special, from our very own Mint Parker. Have a great night.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above, from the mountain plains, to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through